Classic Restos, proudly brought to you by Shannons. Sign up for the Shannons Club. Kenworth Trucks Australia. Pace Farm Eggs. And Holden Certified Service AC Delco Parts.
G'day, I'm Fletch and welcome to the show. This week it's a tribute to a great Australian. And I've chosen to bring this episode to you from inside the Highlands Hotel here in Mittagong, New South Wales, in this week's Classic Restos. Recently we have lost a Holden legend, one of life's gentlemen, Neil Joyner, founder and president of the Trafalgar Holden Museum in the Gippsland of Victoria. Thanks to Brett and Maz here at the Highlands Hotel, Mittagong, New South Wales, I think it's only befitting to raise your glass in tribute to Neil from inside an Aussie pub. This is my version of the front bar.
Before I start, knowing Salt of the Earth people is wonderful. Asking Brett to use his pub as a location set is one thing, but on arrival, tea, coffee and cake is all set up. And Brett even took the initiative to show some photos of some early Holdens. So come on and see Brett, Maz and team. If Maz isn't here, see Brett. The food is wonderful and the pub has a great atmosphere. So why not come and check out the Highlands Hotel, Mittagong, New South Wales. Mark it down as a destination for your next road trip. Neil was such a likeable guy. His passion for Holden and Australian manufacturing was just so strong. He was a gentleman. He was approachable. And I'm just so fortunate to have had the occasions that I did working with Neil and filming for Classic Restos.
Well, I'd like to welcome Classic Restos to our museum. This is a fantastic thing to have you here, and we just love our museum. We've got a remodified old butter factory, and all we've really done to it is give it a good coat of paint and a really good spruce up. We started this some 4 or 5 years ago. We actually started work 5 years ago on the factory itself to get it ready for our displays, and it's sort of just grown like Topsy ever since. We absolutely love it. The place is staffed by volunteers and every one of them are enthusiasts, and yeah, we just have a ball here. We're a little bit quirky, we like something a bit different, so we've got things like a Lloyd Hartnett, which is part of the Holden history. If we go back far enough, Holden were sort of into saddles, and then they went on to motorbikes, and then they moved on to motor car bodying. Holden in 1928 built 36,000 bodies in the 1 year for 45 or 46 different makes of motor car. So we're talking about not just models, not roadsters and tourers and so on and so on. We're talking about makes of motor car. And that includes the T-model Ford in some of them in the early days. So yes, we've got a variety of stuff here that we just love to look at and play around with and love to talk about. Well, what does the Holden mean to me and to all of our volunteers, I would say? It is just Australian. It is what we are all about. It is we designed it, we built it, we had it. And when you look back on it, I suppose what I love about the Holden is that it was all Australian. You could break down in the middle of the night anywhere in the country, and the local chemist shop would give you something to fix your car and get you going. When you look at the Holdens in the early days, you look at the first that came out, we were talking about a motor car that could sit on 60 mile an hour all day, every day. And even though that doesn't sound a lot when you're looking at 110 kilometre zones, the roads were nothing like they are today. And you would belt along with, very skinny little tyres, and she would do it all the time totally reliably. They were a fantastic bit of engineering, and what I love about them was their reliability. There's only two things that can go wrong. One, the spark plug will pack up, which you can replace pretty easily, or you've run out of fuel. And if you've got spark and you've got fuel, your Holden will go every time, guarantee it. Holden started as a saddle maker back in 1856. A young chap from England came over here. He'd had a blue with his stepmother, and he arrived in Australia at the age of about 16. A few years later, he got a small inheritance from his mother's estate and started up a saddlery business. Now, his father was a saddler and a very, very good businessman, and he started up the business, and on it went from there. So Holden started tin bashing in about 1900, where they were making sidecars for Golding, who was supplying the sidecars to Harley Davidson. They then went on from there to manufacture their own design, and in about 1915 they bodied their first motor car, which just happened to be a Lancia. When you look at the very early Holden, it was basically a US designed or a GM designed or large input into the design of the very first Holden. When it came to producing it here, it was an all-Australian product with all Australian people employing hundreds and then thousands and then tens of thousands of people. And it goes on. I think what we've lost, we look at Holden back in the 60s, they had 54% of the new car market. That is just a fantastic thing. And you think of all the people that were employed and employed because, they say for every one job there's a flow on of another 5 or 6. And if you even conservatively say they were employing 4,000 people, that's 25,000 people nearly that have got a job purely because of Holden. I don't think there is anybody in Australia that hasn't been touched, or any family that hasn't been touched significantly by the Holden brand in one form or another. I'm as proud as could be to represent Holden here today and just have our museum representing everything, and I would welcome anybody and everybody to come and have a look at what we've got here. It will really do the Holden in you proud.
I've been a motoring enthusiast all my life. My Coupe 4 is rare and very special. A real performance car with all-wheel drive grip. I'm not a car club bloke and I don't work on it myself, but I do have a great mechanic. One day, I might even get that HQ. When it comes to insurance, it's got to be Shannons.
Shannons shares your passion. Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
When it comes to cars, there are some brands that will remain with us forever, no matter what. The Holden was always Australia's own car, held high in the hearts of many. Those lines, that chrome, the stories around them, and the people that owned them. From the classic through to the final, you can still trust in genuine Holden and AC Delco parts, available through the Holden Certified Service Network.
Your story began in 1971. It's part of an endless tapestry that tells the story of our nation. It connects innovators to artisans, forests to houses, from the largest of operations to the smallest of outcomes. It's heritage. It's a legacy.
Walking around inside the Trafalgar Museum was always awe-inspiring. Each time we visited, there were always changes that Neil had done. Our museums, they're technically closing, not opening. We have the depot at Deniliquin, we have the Move Museum at Shepparton, for example, to name two, and we have to support them whenever we can. Neil loved his Holdens, and he even had the odd exclusive prototype.
We have something very special behind us. We have a one-off prototype from Holden, the Torana. Neil, what's the story here?
I can only tell you what little I know about it. It's a 2004 development. It's a one-off. It was going to be released as a production run. There's some argument as to whether it was the GFC or whatever they called it, put the kibosh on it. But there's also a story that people thought it would compete too much with the Commodore, and as the GM at the time said, Commodore's got enough competition as it is. Let's not give it any more. But it's a magnificent looking motor car.
It is very Commodore though, isn't it? It would have been very interesting to see how even the name, the brand Torana, to come back after all of those years. And even in 2004, it was still a lot of displacement in time since we saw a car made as a Torana.
I would think by the look of the car, it would have been a roaring success. I think Torana's had a real soft spot in most Holden's hearts, Holden lovers' hearts anyway. And I think it would have been a really sensational deal.
The white interior, wow, that might not be for everybody, but it certainly contrasts with the paint on the outside. When you sit in the car, it's like something that a stormtrooper would have driven off Star Wars. It's very, very white, Neil.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would suit my grandkids, actually, but...
Crayons.
But, look, it's a concept car, so they could probably have done something a bit different. And
interesting to see the start button in the centre of dash as well for 2004.
Just amazing. The designers in Australia, when you go back and have a look at this, and I go back to the Hurricane, which is another concept car they built, some of the features in that are just mind-blowing. We're talking about, I don't know when the Hurricane was done. It was sort of 1980s sometime. No rear vision mirrors, all cameras, all sorts of, really fascinating stuff.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too with this prototype, making it extra cool, is knowing that it's a prototype. With none of the dials work, they're fixed in position here for this prototype car. But to see what they were thinking in the early 2000s, and yourself with a prototype, the drawings and designs would have been around a few years even prior to that. So we could be talking late 90s here.
We could well be, yes. It could well be late 90s. And I think the design of this would stand up today in any sort of scrutiny.
I think it's pretty game too to call it a Torana back in the time and give it those sculpted back seats. Now that is cool. I've got to give points here for the seating in this car. The seats, if I was looking for this Torana back in the mid-2000s, I think the seats would have sold me.
Oh, I think there's a lot of features about this car that would have sold me. I had a Torana, an LC.
Neil, the only thing you're sold on is HOLDEN, and you're gone, aren't you?
I am, yes, absolutely. Doesn't have a Holden badge, it doesn't exist.
We look at the engine here now. The prototype based on the V6, keeping, I guess, in line with the early Toranas, only being available in 6 cylinders. Well, obviously LX and LH had the V8 options back in the day, but originally our Toranas had 6-cylinder engines. So do you think that was their thinking here with this?
I would think so, yeah, very much so. I think it's a V6, 3.6 litre. It was compatible with, or similar to everything else that we were using. I think it would have been a real winner.
I really enjoyed walking around there with Neil. He loved showing you what he had done since the last time that you were there. The expansion of his new buildings, absolutely magnificent. And there's another shed out the back full of cars with his favourite HD Holden. That was a very special car to him. He was so proud of the Peter Brock section of the museum, and of course the design section as well, where our good friends at General Motors Australia were kind enough to hand stuff over to Neil to display at the museum. The HD behind us, Neil, what's the story on that?
Okay, it's got 50,000 mile on it, absolutely as genuine as you can get. I'm a HD lover, purely because I nearly died when I watched what the press did to the model.
Yeah, the ugly duckling,
the
right?
ugly duckling, with the kidney cutters and.
Yeah. And funny too, it was also the beginning of the premiere too.
Yes.
With that beautiful interior.
Oh, they had some magnificent, and they were genuine leather interiors too. So yeah, I'm very much a HD man, and this is similar to, I had one like this with it, but it was an X2.
So how did it come along? What's its history?
It was actually in Queensland, and just propped up one day, and It had 49,900 mile on it or something, and I thought, So I went and I grabbed it. Yeah. But beautiful car, isn't it?
It is.
Just magnificent.
Gorgeous. They all tell a story. That's what I love. Love the history. What dealerships were they sold from? What areas did they reside? What sort of running did they do?
Yeah.
This would have to now be, I would say, the most emotional room in the house. It's the Peter Brock section where you've actually got some of Peter's vehicles in here that
Absolutely.
Brocky actually drove.
Yes. Right behind you there.
Let's start off with this Austin.
Austin A7.
Yeah.
Your opinion of them and mine would probably agree. Somehow he disassembled it to that stage, and that was his paddock bomb.
So this was we hear of him getting around the paddock and this contraption.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. It's got ball tyres too.
Yeah, that's the actual vehicle, and I believe that's the condition it was in when they found it.
Yeah. Wow. Now, this EH behind us, bit of a sensational car, this. EH was not a very heavy car. It was running triples on full song. That would have sounded awesome.
It would have sounded fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That was going to go to Goodwood in England the year after he died. He'd been there not long before he died.
Yep.
And if you ever see it, you can Google it, and it comes up, and here's old Humpy getting around amongst all these little A30s and the like.
Yeah.
And he's sliding from one side of the road to the other, but keeping up with all of them.
Yeah.
And they're all amazed, saying, "Who is this guy and what is this thing?"
Yeah.
You know?
I can't believe how well the Humpies race.
Amazing.
Like even the guys today at Eastern Creek are pulling 200 down the chute.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking a 138 grey engine and not a lot of modifications done, and getting them to rev that hard to pull 120 miles an hour.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah,
and we're talking stuff, it's well over half a century old.
Yes.
Okay, time for Brocky's Torana over back there. 1974 LH. Around about 350 horsepower he was running
So they reckon,
back in the time. And when you look at that, like power to weight ratio, that's a stout little car.
Oh, it'll get up and go, won't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be really, really tops.
How do you feel in the presence of the cars that he used to drive here in your museum?
Yeah, it's all absolutely awesome, isn't it? It's sort of quite moving. It's just a shame he ain't here to spend it with us.
Yeah, I know. And if he was still with us, chances are you might not have the cars.
No, well, that's possible too, isn't it?
And how did you feel when you acquired Peter's first car? When you must have remember that time.
All of these are on loan to us.
Right. We've all heard stories of the Austin that he put the 6-cylinder into as well, and that's it over there as well. It's virtually a mid-mounted car, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You're sitting alongside all the action, aren't you?
Yeah.
So, yes, it's an amazing bit of work, and I bet it absolutely flew.
Yeah, Austin A40?
A30.
An A30? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be too many Austin A30s getting around to go like that. I love the signatures up under the bonnet as well. I think that's very, very cool.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, look, this is another edition here at the Trafalgar Holden Museum, and Neil, again, it's just incredible what you've done here to have a Peter Brock room. And, for any die-hard Peter Brock enthusiast, I don't think there'd be a dry eye in the house walking in here to see pictures around the wall. And it goes outside as well. You've got a cabinet there with Peter Brock memorabilia everywhere. And it's a beautiful tribute to the great man.
Well, he's all part of the story, isn't he? And a major part of the story.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time out here. The RT Charger's the real deal. An E49. Remember A-Charger? I've always got projects on the go, so Shannon's laid-up cover helps protect my restorations. I'm Mopar through and through. It's a passion Shannon's understands. I wouldn't insure my cars and bikes with anyone else.
Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
They may not be making the classic Holden anymore, but the legacy lives on. You can still have a Holden certified service using genuine Holden and AC Delco quality parts at over 180 centres across Australia. Go to holden.com.au to find your nearest centre. Book your Holden in, maintain the pride.
And of course, if you own a classic bike, a classic car or a classic truck, it just has to be insured with these guys. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646. And keep in mind too that the Shannons Club awaits you. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. And going back to the first visit, Neil showed me this 1969 HT Monaro, an original car, steel wheels, narrow tyres, absolutely brilliant. And then moved into a next room, a 1953 FJ wagon. How rare is that? All at the Trafalgar Holden Museum, just amazing, sitting there on display.
50 years of Monaro this year, and I think this is about as good an example as you'll see.
This is actually my fault. I love this car, and thanks for sticking up for me there, Neil, but it was myself that actually diverted Neil. I love this. This is an incredible car, 1969 HT. I don't know what it is. I think it goes back to the simplicity. Maybe it's the steel wheels and the narrow tyres. I don't know, but this is a gorgeous car.
It's only just come up full restoration. The people who own it, their father bought it brand spanking new, until he got ill and he put it in a container for about 20 odd years, and they've pulled it out, two brothers, totally restored it, and I think they've done a marvellous job. It just looks $1 million, and I think you're right. The simplicity of it is the thing that attracts you to it. It's exactly as it would have come out of the showroom, and I think it's just a lovely example of Monaros.
Some fantastic cars were made up, well, performance cars up to, of course, the end with the VF. Beautiful cars, safe cars, nice performing cars. But when we look at this, we go back to that class of the time. I guess when they were new, people took them for granted. But they aren't made anymore. How many hundreds of times do we have to keep saying that? Mm. But we just look at the metal in these things, the shape, and I guess the time and effort that went into the interiors and the planning, and I guess the ergonomics of the car that really make it stand out to what it is today.
Absolutely. It sort of screams out, hey, look at me, doesn't it? It's the whole thing is just fantastic. And remember, it's 50 years old this year. Mm. So it's a great example of the engineering of the time. Mm. You know, we always look back and say, oh, don't you remember this? They're not half as romantic when you drive them as you think they were, but these are still a great example of the muscle cars of the time.
Just unreal. And we're not looking at a 307 Chev spec here or a 350, or not even a 308, Australian 308, the little 253. And that's kind of neat as well, because it was such an overshadowed engine because it just wasn't there in the realm of performance. But back in the time, two-door car, V8 engine, didn't really matter that you didn't have barrow loads of horsepower, you had the sound.
Exactly, that's what it was all about, wasn't it? And really the 253, as you say, was very much an overshadowed motor. It performed brilliantly and the economy was extremely good.
They were a good package in a Torana.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They were a fantastic package in a Torana.
Well, here it is, the wagon, the 1953 FJ.
Aftermarket wagon. You could walk down to Holden, buy a wagon for about £700, then take it down to Cordell's Pedal Works, and another 500 and so pounds later, you could have a FJ wagon.
Lots of pounds back then, mate. Put the smile on the man's face.
Yeah, look, just roughly the price of a FJ was about 1.5 years average salary. So that'll give you a bit of an idea of what it was worth. Yeah. But fabulous. I believe there's only 3 of these left in Australia. One in WA, I believe, owned by Holden, and there's one up in New South Wales, I believe, sort of rusting away a bit, but this is a beautiful example of this, and we've been very lucky to have the fellow leave it here for us. So.
Now, this particular wagon as well, I guess, high on the option list. There's a few NASCO accessories on this one as well.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of NASCO accessories. Anybody who had the money in the day always went down to the NASCO shop and filled her up with all sorts. So.
And it's quite amazing because down the track with the options list, it might have been an extra $25 for a limited slip diff, but $120 for an AM radio.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, eh? It's just amazing. When you look at it and put it all in perspective, we look back now and you say, radio for $100, you wouldn't think twice. But $100 was big money. And
This car, back in its time, though, looking at it now, it's quite opulent. The bright work, again, with Holden, what they did in the 50s with their die-cast work, their stainless steel work, that was 10 out of 10.
Absolutely. And they always came out looking like $1 million, didn't they?
Isn't it interesting, too, that from the 48215 right through to, well, the last of the grey engine with the EJ, you really had one choice of engine, apart from the fact that they were, I think, 132.8 cubes and then a 138, but technically it was still that grey engine. So you had all these model cars, all the trim options and your NASCO accessories, but everyone just got away with that one engine.
Absolutely. And that engine was just fabulous. As I say, give it spark and give it fuel and it must run. There's no question about it. In fact, we've got one here that's got 8,000 miles on it, and to listen to it purr, it just sucks you in. Everybody says, oh, what's so great about the grey motor? You listen to it purr over it. Oh, it's absolutely, you fall in love with it.
This is where Neil was fantastic. It didn't matter what he had on, he'd give you just about every second of any day to give you that time to show you around. And that's what the guy was like.
This episode was in tribute to a great man, a man that meant so much to so many people, a kind man with a big heart, passionate, automotive enthusiast, one of us. Neil stood for so many things on so many levels. He was the founder of the Trafalgar Holden Museum. He was the president. He lived it and he breathed it. His families and countless classic vehicle enthusiasts will miss Neil, but his legacy will always live on. Remember him when you visit the Trafalgar Holden Museum. Thank you.
A tribute episode today to a great man, Neil Joyner. And Neil will be sadly missed. Truly a Holden legend. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch. Thanks for watching.
You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Classic Restos TV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au. Classic Restos, proudly brought to you by Shannons. Sign up for the Shannons Club, Kenworth Trucks Australia, Pace Farm Eggs, and Holden Certified Service AC Delco Parts.